Hey, Argenti here. Argenti has just released and he brings a cool new energy ramping playstyle 2-star rel with one of the most satisfying ultimates in the game, creating damage nukes every time. Let me know below if you're pulling for him. Today we'll go through his kit and how it works, especially his ultimate, which is way better than it seems. We will then go through his calculated best relics, light cones, and main stats along with endgame stat goals. I'll finish with rotations alongside his pros and cons and then best teammates. If you like this guide or it helped, let me know below with a like and sub, and let's begin. So Argenti is a 5-star physical erudition unit and our first of said combo. Erudition may leave a sinking feeling in your chests, but the path is doing just fine. Level 80, he has a base HP of 1048, the second highest attack in the game at 737, a base defense of 364, and a decent base speed of 103. His energy cost, however, is the highest in the game by far at 180, but that's intended, and he can ult at 90 energy anyway, putting him also at the lowest cost ultimate at the same time. For trace priority, level your ultimate first, followed by your skill, and then your talent. Basics do not need to be leveled. Now onto his flashy abilities. His basic attack is a regular basic attack, but his skill Justice Hereby Blooms will deal damage to all enemies on the field, being the third unit in the game with a fully AoE skill. His ultimate, For in this garden Supreme Beauty Bestows, which has the longest ult name in the game, has two different forms. He has an ult cost of 180, but he can unleash a small ult at 90 energy. This will deal damage to all enemies again, like a buffed version of his skill. If you wait to 180 energy, you get even more damage, alongside a bonus mechanic. After doing your AoE damage, Argenti will now unleash a second attack, hitting random enemies 6 times for large single target hits. Against one enemy, this is a multiplier of 850% attack. Against 3, it's 1410%. And against 5 enemies, this multiplier hits nearly 2000% of his attack. Safe to say, his ult is a massive nuke of damage and very worth it when you do stack up his energy. You can use your weaker ultimate in some cases, but most of the time it's just less damage than just doing your main ultimate. One thing you can do is when you're nearing 180 energy is use your stage 1 ultimate, hitting enough enemies to regen energy for another stage 1 ultimate. It could be fun in Simulated Universe. For actual purposes though, it could let you wipe a wave in emergencies and still keep you at high energy, so you can save the second ult for a stage 2 ultimate. Now, a neat mechanic that a lot don't know about is that bounce attacks focus on non-0 HP enemies. Why is this important though? Well, the second attack he unleashes during his 180 cost ultimate targets random enemies and is in fact a bounce. This means with a greatly invested Argenti, alongside natural harmony supports you'd have in a team with him, your AoE damage on the first half of the ultimate will be one-shotting weaker enemies. So although they will show up in the animation, if you look closely, any dying enemies will be ignored. And that massive single target multiplier goes all onto the enemy that isn't dead, which is probably a boss or elite. So he does great AoE damage in his ult, which directly translates into great single target damage at 570 multiply value. It's a bit like a blast attack with extra steps that can hit 5 enemies and is a very strong ability. Now, how are we getting to that 180 energy? Well, outside of teammates, his talent, Sublime Object, will definitely help. For every enemy hit when Argenti uses his damaging abilities, he will regenerate an additional 3 energy, as well as getting a stack of Apotheosis, which will increase his crit rate up to 10 stacks. At level 10 talent, this is a 25% crit rate buff. Finally, his technique will daze enemies, making them unable to attack. When entering combat, Argenti will hit all enemies as well as regen 15 energy. Onto traces. His first ascension passive grants him a stack of Apotheosis at the start of his turns. Since he will stack it up really easily, this is whatever, but it's still nice to have. His second makes him regenerate 2 energy whenever enemy targets enter battle. This can be a new wave of enemies, like the second wave in Memory of Chaos, and it can also be enemy summons. For example, the guard summoning his soldiers or the robot summoning fishies. His third ascension passive will grant him a 15% damage buff when attacking enemies under half health. Literally Himiko E2, and he ideally wants to one-shot weak enemies, so this only comes into play on strong enemies. For trace bonuses, he will get a lovely 28% attack for that massive base attack, 14.4% physical damage bonus, and some needed 10% HP. Let's go through Eidolons real quick since they're not for everyone, but his E1 is a great starter one. It will make his talent grant 4% crit damage now for every stack of Apotheosis, for a total of 25% crit rate and 40% crit damage. and that is a neuron activation if I've ever seen one, and will grant Argenti a 14% DPS increase. His E2 grants him a 40% attack buff when ulting versus 3 or more enemies, applying before his ultimate and making sure that AoE damage goes even harder, granting a 10% DPS increase. His E4 grants him 2 extra stacks of Apotheosis, which is pretty negligible, and his E6 makes his ult ignore 30% of the enemy's defense for a final 12% DPS increase. Now let's head on to Relics, which I thought would be obvious, but then I saw polls asking about the follow-up set on him, so here we are. 4 Champion is his best, granting damage percent and a great amount of attack percent. This is followed by the Quantum set versus Quantum weak enemies. 4 Quantum will win when you consider Harmony buffers though, but the Quantum set is like this on pretty much every DPS anyway when considering Quantum weak enemies. 2 Champion and a 2 attack percent combo also work pretty well for less overall farming. For Planar Ornaments, it's really up to substats and what you want to farm. Inert Salsato is his best, considering that crit rate buff, which will be rarer than the attack percent from Glamoth, which only beats out Inert by a tiny bit at 160 speed from ally speed buffs. However, as you can see, all sets kinda are just good, so farm what you like for him. The main stats and subs will be most important. Onto main stats, we will opt of course for crit rate or crit damage chest, speed or attack percent boots, physical damage percent orb, and an attack percent robe. Crit rate chest is the best when you have a crit damage Lycone like his signature, Before Dawn, or Genius's Repose. Speed boots are ideal for more consistent damage, and so you don't get your ultimate when Honkai Star Rail 2 comes out, but attack percent boots are fine to use with speed buffers or a heavy energy battery comp. Energy rope is bait since people see energy in his kit 1,000 times and think energy rope is the way. Energy rope does not give meaningful new rotations and it's a damage loss, but it's comfy to use, it will be viable, so if you want to use it, go ahead. For an endgame stat goal, we will aim for 3k attack, 139 speed, 50 crit rate, and 150 crit damage. The crit rate will go high if you use a crit damage light cone, since you will go for more crit rate, and let the light cone buff your crit damage. This 50 crit rate will end up at 75 at max Apotheosis stacks for a nice 75 to 150 crit ratio. Speed as always is up to preference. The 139 speed here is if you want to maximize your Memory of Chaos versus the 10 cycle limit we have. Now I'd like to address the topic of break effect Argenti. Versus 5 or 3 enemies where he is supposed to be brought, Argenti will prefer crit much more. His whole kit skills very well on crit, and dropping it all for break effect loses you so much damage. You also have to be versus a fully physical weak stage, which will only come up for his Memory of Chaos rotation and then probably disappear. Versus one enemy, break effect could be good, but Sushang and Luca are literally right there. Some say his break dart could be good for Kafka, so let's imagine a scenario where we use them together. We have to be versus a fully physical and also hopefully lightning weak stage. Conveniently, there are a few this Memory of Chaos, but anyway. So I use my Argenti ultimate to do massive toughness damage to all enemies, since my skill only has 30 toughness damage and I don't want to use 2 skills. The enemy were one-shot because of my high base damage. If they weren't, Kafka would one-shot them anyway with her ultimate with no other dot, since they only have 20 to 32k HP. I'm now versus the boss. The boss has 250k HP. I could use Luca for a massive 100k break that I can even detonate with Luca, or I could spend 3 turns getting Argenti's ultimate back and pray that I break with it. By that time, the boss is going to be dead. So if you want to run it, go ahead, it's pretty fun from testing, and it's fine to go whatever build you want, but this is a guide for optimal builds after all. Onto light cones, his best is of course his own. It will grant 36% crit damage, and the second passive will grant his ultimate only a 64.8% damage boost. Though not far behind is Today is Another Peaceful Day at S5, since it will be capped easily by Argenti for a kit-wide 64% damage boost. The crit damage and base attack of the signature is what boosts it slightly over the Battle Pass light cone, but it's not a must pull. The other options are relatively simple, with the seriousness of breakfast being a fine option for Argenti. Onto rotations. Argenti's energy varies greatly depending on enemy count, and any enemy summons can change it up too. At worst, you're hitting a 4-turn ultimate with Argenti, despite that 180 energy cost. This requires 3 enemies and a kill, which in Memory of Chaos is pretty reasonable. If you're versus 1 enemy, you'll need 5 turns. Versus 5 enemies, you could drop it down to 3 turns with some kills. Here are some energy rope rotations if you want them, and unfortunately the 1 enemy rotation isn't fixed unless you get hit or have external energy. With Tingyun, you can hit a 3-turn rotation versus 3 enemies, and she can cycle very easily to enable this every rotation of Argenti. You can also hit a 2-turn rotation alongside Tingyun and Huo, which won't be up every time of course. And finally, we have a super dumb but fun 2 ult in 1 action rotation versus 5 enemies with 2 kills, Huo and Tingyun E6. Now let's look at pros and cons. For pros, we have massive AoE damage, having the highest damage versus 5 enemies among DPS. This is going to be pretty useful if Pure Fiction ends up being AoE based. We also have tons of AoE enemies and boss fights anyway, so Erudition, as always, is doing great into that content. On top of that, we have the nuke power of the ultimate being strong in single target. Of course, you'd need AoE enemies to get that ultimate fast, but when you do hit that ult and wipe out the board, that 570% multiplier on the boss is deadly. Then we have lots of energy sources. He gets energy on enemies appearing, and then gets energy on hitting those extra enemies, for a double benefit. High multipliers and a massive base attack are a nice pro too. It means buffers make him excel more than usual. Finally, an underrated pro is due to the fact that his ultimate is a ton of his damage and a nuke. This means buff timing is very easy on him. You plop down all your buffs at once before his ultimate, and watch the enemies disappear. For cons, we have the opposite side of the energy coin. 180 energy is a ton, and in single target scenarios, if they ever appear, Argenti will be very upset. You can mitigate this though with energy allies, so change your team depending on the fight. Another con is the backloaded damage. Argenti's ultimate is like playing Lightning Lord a little bit. Your skill damage is still great, but the ult is just so much more. And finally, of course, in single target, his damage will also be much weaker due to his AoE oriented multipliers. Let's finish with some synergies. So every harmony will work well with Argenti, and debuffers like Pella and Silverwolf will too. He's a hype carry that just adores their buffs and debuffs. Let's talk about Tingyun and Hanya in particular. Tingyun's energy is of course going to be amazing for him, and they'll be a very common pairing. 50 to 60 energy means 1 to 2 less skill uses for Argenti's massive ultimate. She will want to be on a 3-turn rotation build and go very fast, cycling her ultimate fast enough to enable a permanent shortened 3-turn rotation for Argenti. The attack and damage percent boosts are always nice too, and those extra damage procs make good use of his stats. Hanya will be buffing speed and attack percent of a single ally with her ultimate, increase damage percent of allies, and give you skill points. This isn't really a massive Argenti synergy since he's not the most skill point intensive, but she's a great buffer, and it does mitigate skill point usage for any additional buffers. The speed also means he can go much slower, and she can permanently keep her speed buff on him, as we will see in my Hanya guide. She can of course adopt the Penacony set and Planetary Rendezvous for tons of physical damage percent, but maybe you want cogs for a faster rotation. But again, more on that on the Hanya guide, which should be out or out soon depending on when you're watching this. For sustain, of course any solo sustain will work, but the obvious winner is Huo, since she will be providing him with a whopping 36 energy every single ultimate of hers. This also funnels energy into Tingyun for so many high damaging ultimate nukes from Argenti. It is a very fun team to run. So let me know if you're pulling, and maybe you're just secretly pulling for Hanya. Thanks to all my amazing members, thanks for watching, and have a Guoba day.